Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to check today's video out. Guys, today I sort of want to have a wide-ranging conversation on the sort of, not really informal, but this is a study that I've been doing really for the last 45 years on bass fishing. And I want to talk a little bit about what I have seen, what I witnessed over the past 45 years in terms of, bass behavior, some things that work, some things that don't work, and pretty much the state of fishing, the state of bass fishing as it existed 45 years ago versus the way it existed right now. Because I think that by tracking this and becoming aware of this, it sort of leads us maybe to make some better decisions in the future regarding our fisheries, because there's been a lot changed, man. I'm telling you guys right now, a lot of you guys that aren't as old as I am and haven't spent as much time on the water, you'll be amazed about what I'm getting ready to tell you here about what I've seen over the past 45 years of my own personal study on bass. Also, guys, before we get started, I just want to give a big thank you out there. You guys probably get tired of me talking about this every video. I know you guys get burned out on it, but thank you very much for everybody out there that's been using all the links that I put in each video description. All you guys that have used and bookmarked my Tackle Warehouse link for your fishing purchases, and all the Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns and solar bat stuff, and everything that I link in every video description. If you're one of the viewers that are using those links, big thank you from me and my family, because you guys are the reason this YouTube channel's on YouTube. So really appreciate that. Okay, I have been a student of the bass since I started fishing, man. I've been fascinated by bass ever since I was a little kid. And there's some things that I want to talk about here in today's video in terms of what I have seen then, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and what I've seen now in the state of bass fishing, because it sort of like rings an alarm bell a little bit. This video is gonna help educate you and help you become a better angler, but it's also going to educate you in terms of some of the challenges we have for the sport moving forward. Now, one of the things that I have noticed, or one of the things I've learned about bass over the past 45 years, is how incredibly smart bass are. And one of the things that really irritates me is when somebody says bass are just the ignorant little pea-brain creature that don't know any better. Guys, bass are geniuses. They are masters of their environment. They are apex predators. They've been around for millions of years. They are super smart. And part of that wisdom and part of that intelligence that largemouth, or not just largemouth, but any black bass has, is the ability to learn quick. They fail quick, they learn quick, and they don't make those mistakes over and over and over again to the extent that they did before. Now, I have witnessed this firsthand. I've witnessed it over the past 45 years in terms of how the bass have evolved. And I think that we're seeing an evolutionary process with the bass right now that is accelerated at a rate that most people don't understand how quickly they get educated to certain things. Now, here's one of the things that, have led me to realize that is the truth, is because I have seen a gradual increase in the intelligence of a bass into being very, very selective in what they bite and what they don't bite. Now, let me give you guys an example. When I started fishing, back in the 70s, when I really started getting into bass fishing, we had a fraction of the tackle that's available to you guys now. It's like literally, we had, there was probably only, I'm gonna guess maybe 25 or 30 or 40 lures out of the whole fishing industry. You had, small line of crankbaits, you had plastic worms, you had some spinner baits, not very much out there. And a lot of these lures were very, very basic. They were like, let me show you guys one here, what I'm talking about. I'll give you guys an example. And this is what I'm talking about as far as how bass evolve and get educated. Back 45, 50 years ago, this lure right here, a Hellbender, was one of the top bass fishing lures here in Missouri. It's like, I personally saw my dad catch a bunch of big fish on this thing, and look how, basic and simple, and really doesn't even look like it's that fishy. But 50 years ago, the bass hammered this thing. And I can promise you, I don't care where you're fishing, if you guys take this Hellbender out there and try to fish where you've been using all your high-tech tackle, good luck, because you're probably not going to catch a bass on this in a week. I mean, literally. If I went down to Table Rock right now, I bet I could throw this thing for 2 weeks and not catch a fish on it. But 50 years ago, you go down there and you'd catch 3 or 4 7-pounders on the thing. So why is it that a bass in 1975 would hammer a hellbender and they won't touch a hellbender in 2024? This is one of the things that I have seen about a bass is they have gotten smarter in terms of how they've evolved to decipher if something's real or not. Now, you just about have to trick the fish into biting in these super, super realistic lures. I mean, look, let me show you the difference here in what we have now. Here's a Megabass glide bait, 2024. Look how realistic this thing is. And here's a hellbender. This hellbender, 50 years ago. And now the bass are even wise to these super, super realistic looking baits like this, and they weren't 45 or 50 years ago to this thing. So when people try to deny the evolutionary process and the intelligence of a bass, this is one of the reasons I know that they are, because you simply can't catch fish hardly at all anymore unless you're using these very realistic high-tech lures, that we didn't have 45 or 50 years ago. And another thing with that is the bass that I have seen, one of the things that I've witnessed is they have become more selective in the areas that they frequent. It's like, 45 or 50 years ago, there were bass everywhere. It's like I remember going down to some of the lakes like Grand Lake and Table Rock, and we would get on these banks back then that, you wouldn't fish today because there was no deep water next to them. There was not much cover. I remember back at Table Rock used to be so full of standing timber that you purposely would look for the areas that didn't have cover on it. And there'd be fish everywhere. There'd be fish in the timber, not in the timber, on bare banks, just everywhere. Now, obviously, there was a lot more fish back then than there are now. I mean, there was more fish in the lakes, but nevertheless, how many bass in 2024 have seen this thing? Yet you can't catch a fish on it. So you tell me, if you talk in terms of how bass get conditioned to your lure, let's say, for example, you're fishing a highly pressured lake and everybody's throwing a Strike King squarebill crankbait, in some type of a hot color, whatever the hot color is, a guy's won a tournament or whatever. The fish get conditioned to that. It's like they got conditioned to an Alabama rig. They got conditioned to, different type of lure categories because they see it over and over again. Bass have not seen a hellbender in 50 years on 99.9% of the lakes around the country, yet they won't bite it today. So from that standpoint, there is some type of process or some type of innate and natural intelligence within the bass that have told them, do not bite chartreuse hellbenders anymore. They're going to kill you. And that's how smart the natural world is. I mean, how do you think that a bird, when a bird first starts, fending for itself, and after it's left the nest and it, goes around to eat seeds or whatever, how does a bird know what is a poisonous seed and what is not a poisonous seed? Because their parents don't teach them that type of stuff. How do they know what they can eat and what they can't eat? That's an innate intelligence that wildlife has, that we have too. Humans have the same thing, but we've completely lost that intelligence due to our civilized lifestyle. But it's the same with a hellbender here. The bass have wised up to them. That's one of the biggest things that I have seen out there is the wisdom of a fish. So leading this forward, if you multiply that, think about this for a second. If you multiply what has happened to the hellbender over the past 50 years, and then you take some of the really high-tech lures right now that people are catching fish on, like jerk baits or, different type of realistic-looking minnows. In another 50 years, if we have any bass left to catch on this lake, if we haven't completely polluted all of our lakes to death, how smart are those fish going to be then? I mean, are those fish going to be educated to these super, super realistic lures at that point? And, a lot more difficult to catch. But one of the things I've noticed, guys, is fishing has gotten harder and harder and harder every single year. But the problem is, and I've talked about this before in some other videos, is we don't see that because the technology that we have in fishing, the electronic technology and the bait technology, has created this illusion that fishing is not getting worse and worse and worse because we keep compensating for that depletion in the fisheries and the education and the wisdom of the bass by coming up with better and better and better products. But eventually, you can only do so much. I mean, you can only do so much with with how realistic a lure looks. Now, the next step, maybe it's some type of noise transmitter that they put in there, or some type of frequency that comes off of the thing, or some type of a natural scent that comes off the thing. And at that point, you know, is fishing at that point? I mean, do we want a bait that you throw out there with your cheater box, and then you've got this bait that emits this frequency that a fish just automatically hones in on and bites? I mean, at some point, you have to reel it back a little bit. So what's the answer to it? I mean, what have I seen in terms of what I have learned over the past 45 or 50 years in my study of bass that's going to benefit us down the road? So it's a challenge right off the bat. I mean, there's no easy answers to it, but the main thing that I'm going to suggest from what I've seen is we've got to rein in technology, number one. We can't let technology keep allowing us to live in this world of denial of reality, this illusion of better fishing. So we've got to back off of technology, get rid of it, you know, some of the more high-tech stuff. Number two is we have got to get a lot more strict with our creel limits. We have to institute slot limits. We have to have habitat restoration projects. We have to have people in the positions of power within the fisheries management agencies across the country that have a very, very powerful lobbying voice and a very, very powerful influence on the legislative process that protects the quality of our air and water. It's like we have got to protect it on every single end. And on top of that, we have got to create more water. We have got to create more places to fish. And this is what I don't understand. It's like, why can't we start subsidizing, or why can't we have some type of a government subsidy where we go into these communities or every place around the lake and we dig out 100, 200, 500, 1,000 acre lakes all over the place. We increase the fishing opportunities for people. That takes more pressure away from the public waters, allows them to recuperate a little bit. Instead of like going into, going into an area that's like outside of the city and putting in a big subdivision, put in a 500 lake, go in the middle of the inner cities where it's dilapidated and there's a bunch of meth heads living around and nothing's going on there, bulldoze that down, dig out a 5 or 10 acre lake everywhere, have more water, more accessibility, more fishing options for people. And that to me is like, I don't understand why we haven't done that more. It's like everybody gravitates towards water. So if you take, for example, if you went into like the city where I live here, Springfield, Missouri, go down in downtown Springfield, Missouri, where there's dilapidated railroad tracks and dilapidated buildings and, just houses falling apart in the inner city, bulldoze all that stuff down, dig out a 10-acre lake, create a park-like atmosphere, get the thing stocked and make it full of fish, making it accessible for people to be able to fish from the bank there. How great would that be, man? And it just helps solve the problem all the way around. So anyway, guys, just a few wide-ranging thoughts there. I don't know if I made my point there, but that's the ultimate thing that I have discovered in the study of 45 years is that bass are smart, bass are super smart. They evolve to fail quick, they learn quick, and they're just incredible creatures. So anyway, I hope you guys are well. We'll talk later.